taster session of this program at Academy of Government, and we had people connected from Hawksey with an interest in social media data, using social media data for improving the local government service, local council service. So what I'm talking today is not about policy or how to using social media in policy making, but how to use social media in managing influence online, in market, and in business. And I, as a social scientist, I spent the last 10 years of my career studying people in technology, people in technology development in different sectors, starting from air traffic control, moving to automotive sector, and more recently studying enterprise systems domains. And from studying how people work in developing technologies, I ended up having an interest for how people sell technology, pitch their products. And I ended up studying people like industry analysts. And how many of you know Gartner? We spent a long time in doing feedback on why Gartner is so influential. And we ended up also realizing, discovering other actors which are relevant in the technological markets, which are analyst relations. So if IBM get a bad ranking from Gartner, they hire some public relations people, analyst relations, which help IBM get a better ranking by Gartner in the various reports. So today I'm talking about a couple of projects which will introduce you on some of the teaching we do on social media analysis, and hopefully will introduce you to some of our components of our vision on how to learn about social media data analysis. So we talk about one project which is titled Text Mining Career, which received the funding from the Challenge College of Humanity and Social Science Challenge Investment Fund. It's recognized promise in innovative projects. And another project which I'm developing as a case study for our course, making use of digital research, which also received funding from the Digital Education Initiative of Edinburgh University. And then I will draw some implications for continuous professional development. I hope that the implication will be creative enough. So what's text mining? Text mining careers is, as I said, an advocate for industry analysts. Industry analyst is not like a doctor, so you have not a formal career progression there. So how do you become an analyst? How do you become an influential and useful person in the so we wanted to use some social media data to answer the question. So we had the privilege of accessing an industrial database of 10,000 industry analysts. Where in this database you have the job profile, job they had, and importantly access to their LinkedIn profile. So, together with colleagues with the expertise in text mining, we are planning to mine information from their LinkedIn profile into the job title, company name, date range, the date and the location of those analysts, and be able of extracting job sequences. So, the job that they had before, the job that they have now as an analyst, And in some case, when you have been an analyst, what are you doing now? And then we want to cluster those 10,000 analysts in macro categories, which will tell us something of what is the ideal typical career of an industry analyst, which will help us understand how to become an analyst, how to gain the relevant influence, the relevant expertise that makes you such an influential actor in the market. As I said, very importantly, I'm a social scientist. I spent years in working in observing industry analysts, going to Gartner conferences, spending the money that you have to spend to get into those conferences, interviewing those people, and gaining a domain knowledge, a knowledge of the practice of being an industry analyst. But this might be an in-depth knowledge which is biased by the access that I managed to have. So through collaboration with other experts, with an expertise in text mining and in an expertise in sequential analysis using some software tool like R that does this type of analysis, I will be able to expand my understanding of the practice. But what I have to learn is how to talk to these other experts. So these are the hypotheses that we are going to test on this corpus of social media data. So how to become an analyst? How does a successful analyst career look like? There are assumptions that we take from our inductive ethnographic work on the field, which is analysts come from a heavy IT, heavy industrial IT background. This is is that true? What happened before you became an analyst? Another assumption is analysts have a background in marketing. So there might be ideal type of careers which correspond to assumption. We might learn something new. And what analysts do after having achieved the center of the industry. If you become a Gartner, you are the maximum influence in the IT market, but it's a very demanding job. You are traveling all the time, so there is people that make moves, strategic moves, and moving to other type of careers or become self-employed industry analysts. And then having those large-scale data, we might also be able to test some hypotheses about what my colleague, a computational anthropologist, might call intra-species mobility. So what happened in how Gartner provide advice if we realize that a huge number of people move from IBM to Gartner? If we realize that there is a big mobility in terms of number from some major IT firms into industry analysts, we might be able to say that something that the Office of Fair Trade will be interested about. And then we also might want to test about the dynamic within this wider ecology of IT market players, which is not we comprehend also other professions like sourcing advisors or IT management consultants and industry analysts. So these are industry analysts growing bigger than sourcing advisor. Having those large numbers, we will be able to respond to those questions. And another project we are developing is to use Twitter data to analyze analyst relations events. I was talking about analyst relations initially. Okay? So IBM get a bad mark from Gartner. IBM hired analyst relations to improve their ranking. Analyst relations are their own event, and one important assumption, which is a differentiator apparently in the UK context of industry analysts, is the analyst relations, is that apparently UK analyst relations are more tightly connected, know each other and know analysts and know vendor much better than, for example, analysts in analyst relations in the UK. This is a huge differentiator, and analyst relations can sell their expertise better if they are able to demonstrate that. Because if you are tightly connected, what it happens that you analyst relations know that an individual vendor is run by not just Gartner, because you have other analysts in the field, you have other analysts which are, for example, Forrester, if you're familiar with it, IDC. So one individual vendor can get run by different industry analysts. If you are a competent analyst relation, you should know that there is this multiplicity of rankings going on in the IT market, and this goes together with you being tightly connected, knowing the market, knowing each other. Another assumption which is very important is the bidirectionality, the symmetry of attention between analyst relations and analysts. Analyst relations, sure, their job is to talk to analysts because they want to influence analyst ranking, but are analysts listening to analyst relations? Are somehow analysts responding to them, returning the attention? And so, using very simple social network measures, we have been able to find some evidence which is crucial for the practice. One of those measures, after having collected Twitter data, which were exchanged under a specific hashtag AR4, which is as if we start and analyze what happens today in this event through analyzing the content of the Twitter messages that are exchanged under the RC hashtag. After having collected those data, we analyze the degree centrality. Degree means how many connections. We still found that there is work for analyst relation to do in order to gain the number of repeats I mentioned that come back from analyst to analyst relation. Again, another very simple measure, but if you have the domain knowledge of a specific practice, you can use social media data to provide evidence which is crucial for for that profession. And this again cannot be work that couldn't be possible without the collaboration between a social scientist, myself, who spent time in understanding that particular community, and a computer scientist that helped me with figuring out what was possible to do with the social media monitoring tools. That's the example, the visualization of the graph that you get when you put your Twitter data on Giphy, which is a very well-known, publicly available social network analysis tool. And when you see dots that are more or less of the same size, you can talk about a more horizontal community where there is reciprocity, which might be a very trivial finding, but as I said, with relevant domain expertise, you can make literally social media analysis very relevant. Now I think it's time for me to come to the conclusions. And my conclusion is social media data is a great opportunity, but what is fundamental for our vision in how we want to train people in using social media data is understanding how important it is to use mixed methods. Hypothesis, there is a lot of discussion about data scientists or people having access to large amount of data but not knowing what to do with that. We found extremely helpful to generate hypotheses through small-scale fieldwork study, observing the practice, understanding what is relevant for a specific community, and then test those hypotheses on large-scale data without thinking that those are the only hypotheses that can be relevant. You might discover something else, but it's really important to manage the economy of doing a research project to have those mixed methods. And another very important aspect of working with, not talking about big data that can be small, but talking about working with social media data, is that it will be an interdisciplinary work. And we are targeting, in our training, we are targeting people with expertise in marketing, we are targeting people with expertise in policy making, local council, local government. And we want them to appreciate and consider the opportunities that social media data offer them without turning them into cold-faced data workers. That's not our expectation. It's very unlikely to find in the same person the knowledge of a specific practice and the ability to work with complex data. And that's not a problem. We are not assuming that we are creating this monster. We want to work in interdisciplinary groups, and we want to provide expertise which allows people to work in those contexts. And domain expertise is so important. Also, and take the examples I mentioned before. Without me and my group of colleagues working with industry analysts, we could never get access to this industrial data set to the 10,000 analysts in it. that was an opportunity. Finding the right data was an opportunity given through the small-scale fieldwork project that we undertook before getting into having an interest for social media. Finding the right data is a privilege that is given if you know the domain, if you know the practice, if you have acquaintances and contact in that specific area. And then we have another privilege as social scientists. We are not studying physical particles. We can ask people what's relevant for them. We can test our hypotheses. We can return them to that. And so the significance of our study can be tested through talking to people, which is another great advantage. And then I want to conclude with a concept which comes from my institute, which is science and technology studies. In science and technology studies, there is an interest for expertise. What makes people experts? And there is a colleague from Harvard coming up with the idea of interactional expertise as opposed to contributing expertise. If you are a data scientist, you have the expertise of analyzing large-scale data, collecting them, and using social media monitoring tools to work on them. But what we are expecting is to train people having a different type of expertise, which is interactional expertise. The expertise to work with people with a data science profile to come up with relevant questions that make sense for the data scientist, for the computer scientist, to know enough about data science to turn their domain expertise, their everyday problems in problems that can be tested by data science. And interactional expertise is, as I said, not contributing expertise, not the expertise that makes you a data scientist, but the expertise that allows you to talk to them and successfully turn your concerns in something that they can make sense of. Thank you.
Well, we've got some time for questions. Before you usually slowly enter the day, so. You talked about using social media data. Has any ethics or issues are there associated with that we've been addressing, or do you think because it's public information that it's okay to access and use?
So the main issue is it's not always public information. Actually, for example, if you talk about the text mining career, then you get to LinkedIn profiles through an industrial database. So you don't get directly on LinkedIn, but you select the LinkedIn profiles that are relevant for you through a sifting, which is a property of an industrial partner, which gives you that shortlist, that number of items under an agreement, which allows you to use them for academic purposes. Now, this is an ongoing, text mining is an ongoing project, and we are still in the phase of designing the experiment. So we will encounter problems or we need to come up with a viable solution because actually the API, LinkedIn API package doesn't allow you to get job profiles of people. So you are left with scraping the HTML of the page, which is illegal. You are prevented from automatically scraping the HTML of the page, but you can do it manually, which is not legal either. But it's hard to find people that do it for you when there are 10,000 profiles to scrape. So we are looking for, is anyone looking for LinkedIn? Coming to an agreement with LinkedIn, which allows us to use those profiles or subset of the content of their page for academic purposes, for research. So yes, the answer is lots of purposes. And this one? No, the two are yes, this is mentioned correctly. This is out degree and this is in degree. So it's the same network of people, but this measures how many tweets Duncan sent to the people connected to him, and this measures how many tweets Duncan received from the people connected to him. But the size, sample size is the same. Is that correct? Again, having access to data about analyst relations event is an adventure in itself because you have, it's an interprofessional community. You have to know that they get together in conferences where and when. And we are now still in the process of finding some comparator in the US to make the case that the UK analyst is connected. But I got to know a few days ago that there is a comparable conference run by KCG, an organization like that, in the US. So it's an adventure in itself to know the analyst relations conferences in different countries, which makes sense for you to compare. And that's why domain expertise is crucial to get good quality data.
Let's go time for one more question.
When you start publishing results from there and talking to the community about the behaviours that you see on things like Twitter, do you think it's got the potential to change the way people behave on Twitter to be perceived in a certain way? So if you perceive people at a certain point in their career as behaving more reciprocally than others, do you think that people, when they see this, will start actually modifying their behaviour? I think a lot of Twitter behaviour is about being seen to be doing something, rather than actually doing it.
Yes, in the professional practice and community, adoption of Twitter it's still uneven. So some analysts invested in Twitter, and they are very visible there. But but some other star analysts, which are very visible on the stage in the conferences, don't use Twitter at all. So if Twitter and tools that become available that allow us to measure how influential analysts are through using Twitter, I assume that more analysts will become aware of being measured through their adoption of Twitter and therefore change their pattern of Twitter use.
How is it representative of these models? Because like I said, it's in the sample,
Yeah.
they also sample people who are not even particular
Yeah. And in the domain of analyst relations, because I'm going to study analysts using LinkedIn, and out of 10,000 analysts in the database, 10,000 will be in the files. And so, everyone is represented. Analyst relations, yes, I can use Twitter because one evidence we have is that there is a number of tweets that are made by analyst relations, which is higher than the average tweets of the average Twitter user, which tell you the level of doesn't tell how many analyst relations are not using Twitter, but it tells you that there is a high level of adoption there. So, of course, we are very aware of the sampling biases, but we are absolutely paying attention to that.
Well, it's good to how it knows. So once you publish it, I hope that people will make changes and kind of, all right, this is like, this, you know, that they'll see this kind of behavior, and like, I'm at this level, I want to be at their level, I'm going to start doing this.
So this is a big question which is addressed to academic research. So when you come out with a paper, it's maybe sometimes 5 years after that's the phenomenon you are talking about happening. So how relevant it is, how highly it is academic research, I have no answer.
Well, we want to grow your Twitter followers by 1,000 people by next month. I know a couple of services that will do that for you. But thank you, Gemma, for picking us up. And next, I'd like to welcome Nicola Whitton. I can just grab this slide. So I first I first met Nicola a couple of years ago. I don't know if you remember being for the London College. But I've been following your work ever since. So nice again to see you.
Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for coming to a beautiful sunny morning in Edinburgh. As Martin said, I'm Nicola. I'm a researcher at Manchester University, and I'm really lucky in that actually my research area is games and learning. So it's kind of a little bit like a job and a bit like just looking around. What I'm going to talk to you about today is gamification. Now, this is something that's become, I suppose, getting more and more heightened in learning, particularly around adult learning, and that's why I think it's particularly relevant to CPD. What I'm going to talk about today is, first of all, what is gamification? And it's a term that's been used in a variety of ways, so I kind of want to pin that down a little bit first. I don't want to sort of go have a bit of a rant, got the opportunity to say lots, and go, well, I think there are problems with gamification, but also then start talking about, well, actually, there are some really exciting things that we can do with games. And let's talk about those, and let's open up the conversation with things. So, just a little bit of background about me, just so you can see where I'm coming from. This will show my age, but this is kind of where it all started for me. When I here at Swindon, it was an spectrum, which obviously, I was a big learning program, but no, I had to Chuck and Jet Set early. And this was what really sort of hooked me on computer and what computer games can achieve. And for anyone else that did it, how many people have spent ages typing in names from magazines, realising that it didn't work, and then going off for your tea and somebody else would switch it off and then you have to type it all in again. That's proper programming. So that's where it started for me. And then as I grew up, and discovered other things such as boys and then it wasn't until I was back at university that I discovered him. Highton, do you know who he is? Yeah, this is going to be Fleetwood, Mighty Pirate, and it is the start of a series of games called Hopkins Island. And this absolutely got me hooked back into computer games. And these games are fantastic because they employ narrative, because they employ really funny sort of situations and actual thinking. And it was really this that got me thinking, first of all, about actually this is more than just a game. I'm learning really interesting other things that may never actually be useful unless I get the Caribbean from behind. But actually, I'm learning loads from this. So again, that kind of took a bit of back there, moving into learning technology. It wasn't until 12 years ago now that I was given the opportunity to start a PhD. And given the opportunity to do literally anything I wanted with a computer was lovely. But I decided actually, what I wanted to do is I wanted to research games because I like games and I really think there's something around games. So my PhD was about the use of collaborative games. And again, this is showing my age, but it is, I produced a game which was a bit of a mix-up between the adventure game and between Crystal Maze. So it was about getting a collaborative, it's a collaborative game about getting groups of students to collaborate and see what they can learn through doing that. So that's kind of where I've come from. I finished that about 7 or 8 years ago now, and since then I've been lucky enough to have various research jobs that have allowed me to do projects that focus around on games and learning with children, with adults, but predominantly with adults in higher education, but also in staff training and stuff like that. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is gamification. And to do a talk like this, I always think it's quite good to take one of the thought leaders in the field and choose a quote from them. So this is what I'm saying to do. This is Mary Hopkins. They will have thought of gamification, and at the end of the job that must be done, but it's apparently fun. You find fun, now the job's the game. Now, while I agree with a lot of Mary Hopkins' work, because she's a respected academic in the field, this is something that I take passionate. Now, this is the idea of gamification. Is that if you have something to do, you don't like, it's a bit boring, you can take this extrinsic layer of motivation, you can add to it, and it becomes fun. And what I will hopefully do over the next half an hour or so is kind of unpick why I don't think this is quite right. And at the end, yes, this is kind of what you're already know. We'll have a poem of how I think maybe Mary Hopkins should say it. So, what is gamification? It's been used in a lot of different ways now. When it started, the idea of gamification actually didn't come from education at all. It came from internet marketing and advertising. And it started as a way of companies thinking about, well, how can we get people to behave in certain ways online? And I really like this example. This is one from LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a problem that in order for people to be able to share information, for people to gather information about what they're doing, people needed to fill in their profiles. But people don't like to fill in their profiles because it's really boring to fill in their profile. So LinkedIn came up with a way of doing it, and they added this. They added the profile bar. Who could look at the jigsaw with a piece missing and not put that piece in? There's a fundamental human approach to complete sense. So if you see you've got a profile 95%, and they tell you exactly what you need to do to fill it, and actually once you fill it, you go back, because you go back to second because they're always gathering more information. But what they found here was that by adding a physical status line and clearly defined goals, that actually they got the number of people who were filling in their statuses and filling in their profiles just absolutely rocketed. So this is a very basic example of gamification getting something that we wouldn't necessarily be interested in doing. So if you boil it down to what actually is gamification all about, 3 things. First of all, it's post. So there needs to be something that you can have, whether it's your tweets, your followers, whether it's your friends, your retweets, your connection, whether it's a point system. There's got to be some sort of currency that you can count and other people can see. And then there's your visible achievement goals. So there needs to be obvious goals. This is a punch chart. This is something that I use for research purposes called gamification games, which is basically casual games. And we have a punch card system, so you can see how much you've done. And then at the actually, if you get 6, you have 6 games, you get 3 again. But this is also manifest through things like badges, levels, rewards, some kind of system like that that shows your progress against an achievement goal. And then there's also an idea of community. And in most management systems, this usually has some sort of level of idea of competition in there. So this is from the Good Food website, and this is where readers can put their recipes up, and then other people can rate each other's recipes, and you have competitive recipe building. But it's also done through things like statements, discussions, through communities around leaderboards, tools like that. But essentially, if you look at most gamified systems, they boil down to having currency, having visible progress against goals, and having some sort of community element around it. Which is great. There's some really good examples of this working. So one is fantastic. There's only one in the room, but this is an app that goes in the phone, and it can map your runs. So you can see what you're running, you can look at other people's runs, you can set short and long-term goals, you can run this distance in this amount of time, it can give you lots of information about how far you've run, the distance that you've run. This is unfortunately only stats at the beginning of last month, which as you can see is a particularly good month for my running. But it will tell you, so it is currency that you can share with other people on the website, so that you can say the activities you've done, the total distance that you've run, and again, you can compare this with leaderboards on the website. Particularly nice sort of community feature is that you can see where other people are running in real time, and you can cheer them on, and you can see different routes that people run. So that's kind of the game system takes running, which you know an extra motivation buzz to do, and adds the game layer on top of it. Another example is Amazon Reviews. And this is a review of the Frozen Sing-Along Edition DVD. Now, half the room will be going, they want to go. The other half will have no idea what I'm talking about, and so if you don't know what I'm talking about, just practice and lucky. But as you can see here, this is the reviewer, Riaz. Again, writing reviews, some people might like to do it, not necessarily motivational. But because of this comments, there's a community there, these sort of badges. I'm assuming it's here, like she. Hall play, viewer, one voice. In this community, but people find it helpful. If you go to his or her page, you find out that they have a reviewer ranking, that they have the currencies in that helpful. What I find particularly disconcerting is that this person has written 2009 reviews about children's DVDs. Now, if you have children, how do you correct 2009 reviews? Not going to go there. And then you've got the number of lists. So it's about having these currencies that we can share and compare with other people. So, what's the problem with it? It looks like quite a good way to motivate people out, because we've all got more things to do, and if we can find a way to make it competitive, everyone's going to like it, right? So I'm going to use this as an example of what happens in common. I don't know if chore boards. Now we're playing chore boards. It's a gamified system whereby you and your family or you share a house with put the jobs that you have to do into the system, and then you get points for the jobs, and then you get a leaderboard so you can see who's winning. So we've done this in the past, we have children who all housework for us. Myself and my husband never did any work. So we decided, actually, let's put all the jobs in chore boards, so we spent a bit of time doing that. And then nothing happened because actually doing the jobs is still boring, whether you make it into the system or not. And particularly for him, because totally uncompetitive. Just nothing happened, and I had no one to be competitive with. I probably would have got into this, but actually, if I'm competing with myself, then what I'm doing is doing the washing and then putting it into the kids. So this kind of really underlines the problem. Actually, what we're doing with game systems is we're not getting at the activity themselves. What we're doing is we're adding this extrinsic motivation layer. And what motivates people, particularly what motivates adults, is very, very different depending on who you are. So things like competition and set collecting are actually quite gender motivations. There's much more likelihood that men are going to be motivated by competition than women. So it's something that in these systems which tend to be built by men for men, there may well be biases in who's actually going to be motivated to do it. One of the bigger problems for me is around the fact that actually there's research evidence that shows that if somebody is intrinsically motivated to do something, adding an extrinsic layer of motivation can actually detract from the motivation that was there in the first place. So you've got to be really careful in using any sort of gamification that you're not actually taking something across from and spoiling it by making it again. I think as well, we have to be quite careful that in CPD or working with education, further education, we're actually dealing with adults, albeit in some cases young adults, but adults who are busy people, adults who are possibly paying £9,000, and adults who aren't stupid. Adults who get that this is game, they get that gamification is ridiculous. And what we're seeing now is much more rise of people kind of gaming the system, gaming the game. Which I think is great, but not necessarily appropriate in education. So if you go back to Fantastic, when you could go and employ maps, there's a woman in America whose entire raison d'etre is to create maps like this. Now this is the only clean one that I could actually find to show you. But basically, she runs around and she makes maps with different pictures. She might be running or not, but it's actually about gaming the system and realising that this is it's brave from the kind of gamification that's in there. Again, if you go to Amazon reviews, and you can spend many happy hours looking for kind of things that catch the zeitgeist of reviewing. So they're going to come across 3 Wolves t-shirts. If you go look at reviews, that's nearly 200 reviews of people debating the optimum Wolf-to-Moon ratio of t-shirts. One that I like is Liz Pens for Her, where we've got nearly 700 women writing reviews about how they've been empowered in their trouble choosing heavy men pens or something that goes to the pink pen. A personal favourite of mine is the 20-inch Paul Ross canvas. Because you're going to be one of those, which has been 500 people have written reviews of this, including my favourite, which is if you're only going to buy one 20-inch Paul Ross canvas this year, maybe this is it. So again, it's about people playing with the system, and this is what people will do. People don't like to be patronised, they get gamification, it's being used all over the place, and we've got to be really careful of not seeing it as a quick fix. I've read various things about gamify the classroom, gamify what your students do, we can make them motivated. Actually, I don't really believe this is the case. But I don't think it's actually all that. Because I think there are really good things that games can do that are way beyond just their motivational angle. So if you have to take the motivational side, yes, for some people, making sex to connect and decide will be motivational. And there's no doubt about that. Some people will get the whole gamification thing around like it. I don't think there's enough evidence yet to say whether this is sustained. In a lot of cases, cases of example where people get initially and then actually the thing that they're doing is still pretty boring and it's not really worth putting points for. But yeah, some people will know. But actually the 2 areas I think games really have the potential, and we're actually missing a trick with this, isn't it? This is in terms of cost of action. Games involve doing something. They involve doing something with other people. So you've got all the benefits of social learning, you've got all the benefits of constructivist learning, offensive learning, and problem solving. What gamification doesn't do is it doesn't give us problems to solve. It gives us linear tasks to complete within a framework. And actually what's really important in learning is having authentic problems that make sense, that students are saying, why do I need to know this? And actually that's way more powerful than adding an extra layer of points to something. The other area around games learning, which I think gets really missed, and is a little bit controversial for adults, is play. What games are really good for is creating these safe spaces, these spaces in which the rules change and people can practice and play and make mistakes. But our attitude to failure in education is bizarre. Actually, what the failure is an opportunity to learn how to do something differently. But the way that we badge failure and we construct it isn't conducive to taking that line of failure. So by picking up on the plans and like, actually, got protected spaces here. We've got the opportunity to try things out. We've got the opportunity to experiment. experiment, to discover, to stimulate curiosity, all the things that learning should be about, but actually we're really focusing on points and edges and leaderboards. We're missing really quick by not looking at the sort of holistic picture of games, but by focusing on something that's kind of quick and easy to do. We did some research a couple of years ago at NLU, which was actually, I interviewed about 40 students, about a whole range of things related to learning technology, but some of what we were looking at was fun, and how they thought about fun, and whether learning should be fun, and whether they thought fun was appropriate for education. And so we interviewed, I think it was 22 first-year students who were in their first 2 months of university, and we interviewed 17 final year students who were a couple of months leaving. And actually, we're very different in the 2 groups. The good thing about that is, yes, they did think that learning should be fun, education should be fun. Not all the time, not that they appreciate they had to work hard, but actually fun was important. What I thought was really interesting was how they constructed fun. Because not one of these students mentioned games in relation to fun. They didn't mention points, they didn't mention awards, they didn't mention prizes. What they did mention, first and consistently across the group, was if something's fun, it was about doing something. It wasn't, the thing that came up as being not fun was watching somebody read legislate. So anything that's really opposite of that, by doing reading programs that they can actually get their hands on, and they've got practical hands and tactile things quite a lot. And do something authentic. Teacher passion and enthusiasm. What came at single was the teacher who bothers to learn their name. And I mean, that's really hard, but lecturers for quality students. But it was that connection about a lecturer really knowing what they're talking about and being enthusiastic about sharing that and getting people involved. This is so important in terms of fun. Now, so these are not things that are related to fun personally, they might be related to good pedagogy, but can't. And the other side of it was not that surprising, the relationship with peers, the fact that they have a lack of their mates, they work with their mates. But the one that for me is particularly related to games is lack of pressure. That as soon as something is assessed, or something is time limited, or something had an impact out of the particular learning experience, then the fun went. And actually, that's not what assessment's for. Assessment's not there to suck the fun out of learning. Assessment, well, this debate on what it's for, but is that really why we assess people? And again, I think this ties up to our attitude to failure. Is assessment about how often you have to do fail, or is it an opportunity to show what we've learned and to learn more? But this idea of lack of pressure, I think, really relates to what I was saying earlier about play, and that play and games can offer us these playful spaces without the pressure to try things and to fail. And this is actually where I think we should be looking at. If we're talking about gamification or playification, which is kind of the phrase I prefer, these are the sort of things we need to be looking at. I really, really think that we're missing a trick, and this is the kind of worry we're looking at. There are lots of things that games can do that can intrinsically and inherently change the learning experience. What gamification in its current form does is it adds this extrinsic motivational level. But there are intrinsic things that come up. So I'm going to work with a company at the moment, and they are involved with CPD training, and they're involved with values training in companies. Now, values training tends to be delivered by getting somebody in, they call it the Double Home Show. It's corporate for getting PowerPoint and read it out to people. And that's clearly the way to learn values. That's how emotional learning works. So a bunch of people in the room, talk to them about all the values they should have and how they go. Now, two approaches to that. You could gamify it. You could give them points for sitting, you could give them points for not falling asleep, you could even do a little testing with points at the end. Or, which is the approach this company's taken, they can think about, well, actually, what we're trying to teach is values, let's change how we're teaching. If something in learning in particular is boring or people aren't engaging, rather than having this additional layer of let's engage people, let's look at why they're not engaging in the first place. And, you know, in that case, it's quite obvious people don't want to be taught that for half an hour about values. So they've taken games and are using, and actually developed games that get people to talk about and discuss the values that they're working with. So there are some really good things that games are good at. about getting people to be creative. I know Joel's going to talk to this afternoon about some of the wonderful things that happen in Minecraft. But just the fact that we give people space and we make things and we do things themselves is just massively powerful. The way that people tell stories in games and engage with narratives. For me, this idea of mystery, stimulating curiosity is really what education is all about. And we miss this. It's so focused on cramming and facts. And actually, what my students are doing is to think, I want to know that. That matters to me. It's personally relevant, but I'm really curious to explore and to problem solve. These are the things that games aren't really about, that gamification just ignores. And that's at the heart of the real problem with gamification. So I realised my time is coming up, so I just wanted to give a couple of examples of what I think is sort of a bit more sophisticated examples of gamification. And this is one that was developed by a colleague of mine, Alex Mosey at the University of Leicester, with a great history conundrum. As you can see, it looks like quite a gamified system. But this was aimed at undergraduate history students, and it was about getting them to engage with some of the information literacy issues that I just don't Google everything, assume it was true. But what he did is he emailed, they basically had puzzle cards. And every student gets sent puzzle cards, and you either solve the puzzle and you get points for solving the puzzle, or you can trade them. There's also a wiki and discussion boards where you can talk about puzzles and the puzzles, and you can share answers, or you can trade cards. What I love about this is it's actually, yes, there are gamified systems, yes, there are points, yes, there are leaderboard, but actually at the heart of what they're doing is solving puzzles and solving puzzles collaboratively. And that's quite interesting. And what he did, he assessed that as well, and assessed it partly on the points that people got and partly on the way that they contributed to the discussions. So it's more than just getting people to get things for the sake of it. Another example is Senate Secrets. I work with the Games and Learning Special Interest Group, JOLT, which again, anybody's interested in joining. I'm sure Martin will be happy to point you far outside. But one of the things we're really interested in is about gaming conferences. So recently we ran a game called Senate Secrets at the Photo Conference, which is the future of technology and education. And this was about getting people to the conference to meet other people, to engage in meaningful tasks with other people, to get a little bit, because it's in Senate House in London, which is where George Orwell based the Ford Ministry in there on. So it's got lots of rich history, and they wanted people to engage with that. So we had a little box when you went into the main foyer with 6 padlocks on it. So you had your visible points, your padlocks, and you had your goals that you had to achieve. And throughout the day, there were various tasks and puzzles and mysteries that people had to solve with some in life and some in real life. And it finished with there being a room which was very messy, and people had to work out that they needed to get a UV torch, switch the light off, follow the books, put them in order, and get the back of books. And people really engaged in that. And I think it's just looking a little bit differently around the types of what we think about when we think about games, and what the purposes are, and pulling out sort of intrinsic side of what people of what they're doing rather than the extrinsic. Just a few thoughts to close on. Going back to my time of primary portion, I don't think what gamification is bad. I think it works really well in advertising and marketing. But we're education. There will be examples when it works. But it's about changing behaviour. It's a behaviourist model. And it's about motivating certain people to change behaviour in certain ways. So it's about not making assumptions about what does and doesn't motivate people. And thinking about is there the best way to do it. Really understanding the audience. I think the whole sort of gender bias in this has been not really explored. And understanding what it is that motivates people and why you want people to do things that don't actually motivate them. And finally, this idea of what I call deep gamification, for want of coming up with a better name for it. But if you think that most gamification, points badges, leaderboard table is all about this shallow extrinsic layer, actually things that stimulate curiosity and get people problem solving is this sort of deep intrinsic layer. Now, I did promise I'd finish with Perm. So I went back to Mary Hopkins' work and I thought about, well, actually, if I was going to rewrite this, taking a bit less interest in the ability to set to music, a bit more interest in the ability to actually be true. This is what I came up with. So, in some jobs, obviously, there is an element of fun. It seems to be true. Don't spoil that fun by adding points and prizes. If a job is really grating, then they might be motivating. But stimulating curiosity by creating genuine problems that interest and intrigue people may be a more effective long-term education strategy. And with that, I will end.
We've got time for questions then, so can we go?
Hi, Nick. I know Nick quite well, so I apologise for that. I agree with many of the things you said, that you and I would never meet without disagreeing about something. A couple of things maybe you might want to comment on. Is education, certainly to undergraduate level, including schools and FE, gamified anyway? That's one question you might want to comment on. The other is this notion of psychosocial monitoring, exploration without fear of consequence. I'm not sure. Recent research tells us that that isn't the case. There are consequences to play. There's reputational consequences, a whole host of other issues that can be with you in online and gaming experiences, which I think we as researchers have kind of overlooked a little bit. And I'm quite interested in what you might want to say about that.
Right, I'm going back to the first. Yeah, I'm going back to the first question. I've now forgotten what it was. Remind me.
Education is gamified.
I think so completely. I think in terms of we have scores because we have assessments, we have whether they're visible, whether goals are visible, and I think that's possibly where it falls down. But yes, there is an element of artificiality in gaming in education anyway, and I think there's quite a bit written about that in various places. On your second point about the psychosocial moratorium, which is the idea of this kind of safe magic circle play, there's quite a lot written about the consequences that happen outside. And there's also quite a lot written about kind of techniques for dealing with that, particularly around not seeing the game itself as the start and finish of the learning experience, but about how you kind of get people into the game and how you take them out. And there's lots of quite interesting work about the game being an excuse for the debrief and the importance of debriefing and seeing it as a holistic experience. So I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying it's possible.
I think my question is more about the issue with this notion that it's free of consequence, i.e. experimentation games. I don't think it is free of consequence. There are different consequences.
Yeah, I think, well, anything that we do will have a consequence, and there's ways to manage that. But I still think that these play spaces allow people to try out different things than they wouldn't necessarily be able to do in the real world. I mean, big examples that I've worked with before have been people doing role plays at corporate training days when you're role playing the manager, your manager is role playing the person who's junior to you. And obviously, in a situation like that, it's not going to be intense. You can't just walk out after berating your employee. It's not going to happen. But again, there's kind of ways of managing that, and for me, it's about the safety side, but it's the safety to fail is the really important thing. And I think in education we get very much into actually it's a one chance and pass, and that's it. We don't think about actually failure is really important, and that's part of learning, and it's how we construct failure. And I think games, people expect to fail in games. If you get a game, if you buy a computer game, you just play it all the way through, it would be a really bad computer game. That's part of the mindset of gaming. And I think we need to get a bit more of that mindset in education. That answers everything.
Well, good, I'll have millions of questions.
Is there any more questions? I'm just
interested in your thoughts on the notion of Twitter and Facebook as games. I've had that around quite a lot. This is sort of kind of quite a reductionist way of looking at those two phenomenal experiences.
I wouldn't say they were games. I would say they had elements of gamification in there, and I think they're very different things. And I think the gamification particularly, because if you took out your number of tweets and you took out your number of followers or took out the number of retweets, is there anything fundamentally different about Twitter? It is no. And would it work without them? Probably. But would it work as effectively? Because people do look at things like your followers and retweets, and it has currency and it has value in that community. So ditto with Facebook, you have your Facebook friends, and, but actually if you didn't count your friends, would it still be the same? Probably. So that's, I think that's the sort of epitome of gamification, because it's not really changing what's beneath it.
Because people sat there in game studios thinking about really need to learn by our games, and like we should really think some of these things like saying objectives, how do we track the objectives, how do we do it against. I mean, to what extent are we looking at games saying, oh, what they're doing is really good, but all we're really talking about is kind of principles in learning already, but just applied in really good ways. I mean, like, there's a lot of examples of how games are much better, you know, showing you how you're progressing than anything in like the traditional classroom. Like, put 3 bullet points on the board, these are our objectives, you know, you come back to them. You know, it's a poor way of talking about with games, you know, just taking all the learning ideas and just applying them in a much better way.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think it's really, particularly the way that we scaffold learners in games, the way that games don't have manuals, but people can get in and they can learn really quickly. But I think it's sort of being taken that because there are good learning principles embedded in games, we have to make learning into games. Whereas actually, I think what we need to do is study how learning works in games and how it motivates people and how they do that, without necessarily studying pedagogy, because somehow a lot of games, there's a lot of awful games as well, but a lot of games really get that right. And actually the two communities could learn from each other.
Was that presented perhaps like taking out that whole game and saying like it's not gamification, it's just learning applied really well in this particular part, this particular game?
Yeah.
People get hung up on that.
People get hung up on terms, definitely.
Any more questions?
Nothing more.
You have to.
No, it's just something that has bothered me for many, many years in games that I've been involved in games on and off for a long time, is that good games, and you touched on it, are actually really, really difficult to develop. And one of the keys for me of a good game is whatever it might be, you're on the edge of mastery permanently. And I think it's endorsing what you're saying about what's a good learning experience. Well, there's a good learning experience on the edge of mastery permanently. Perhaps arguably it is.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that good games do really well is about managing goals and goals so that they are constantly achievable yet just a little bit out of reach. So it's the idea of I've done this level, the next level is just a little bit more difficult. But also about the areas of plateauing, so that people get a rest and then how sort of difficulty jumps up. But it's always being hard enough to be interesting, but achievable. And I don't think we really think about how we approach a challenge like that in education.
Yeah.
What about the place for coach when it comes to games, for example? We used to have a Hopkins with the gaming community and you could see different behaviors particular cultures. You know, in some cases there may be participants being motivated by certain aspects and then may not be motivated at all. So how, for example, if you were to do this in a difficult classroom environment, how do you deal with that sort of challenge? Not really see your coach.
I think part of it goes back to this issue about games and names. If I'm using any sort of game or play-based techniques with my students, I would never call it a game. Because as soon as you use the word game, you get all this baggage. You'll get some people going, well, I don't play games. I'm not interested. Whereas actually, if you can just think about the kind of principles of games and the things that games do really well, which in a lot of the time overlaps with things that teachers do really well, and about providing space and providing experimentation, and about working together with other people and meaningful tasks and problem solving, actually it's just good learning and you don't necessarily need to call it a game. So I think it's about looking at the wider side of games or potentially having that conversation with students. I think the idea that students are getting savvy to gimmicks such as gamification is one of the things that really worries me. But on the other hand, it's something that you can discuss with students. And I think making them part of that debate is really important.
Well, we've got aspects of playfulness. Today we've got, and I was just watching James play at the back there with Oculus Rift, looking around the room as we take lessons. It was quite fun. I took a picture.
Excellent. You're going to be sick for later then.
So we're going to break now for a quick coffee. We charge on the caffeine, so it's just that where the coffee was this morning. We're going to try and get back here for 20 to 12. So in a couple of minutes. Sorry, yes, James. Thank you very much. Nicola. Thank you. Hi there.
Oh yeah.
Hi.
David met James.
Hi.
It's me.
Yeah.
Got my presentation.
Okay,
I'm
that's
on
great.
in a bit.
This one?
Let's go
sorry.
with the. Yeah, let's try that one. Yeah. I'm so cloud-based. Trying to find a form I can download it to make it work in PowerPoint.
There we go. Oops. It's always working with different resolutions.
That stuff. Excellent. That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll just check your stick. There you
Great,
go.
thank
Thanks
you.
very much.
Mrs. I'll be back and try and take some pictures maybe. Do you want everybody back in here?
Yeah, that'd be great.
there's just that enough of a delay to make it really disconcerting. And then of course with James controlling the movement, it's like, okay, so I'm looking over there, but I'm actually going that way. It's like, James,
It's quite funny to see people moving.
oh, I didn't see that. He took me down a mine, which something, and then round a building.
Well, welcome back, folks. Hi there. So, welcome back. Oh, I think I actually pulled something. So, we go into a slightly different gear now, and we look at some actual examples of CPD going on in the wild right now, concrete examples. And so we've got 3 presentations coming up now, and we're going to look at some CPD. And we're going to start with, as I mentioned earlier, alt-line technologist of the year, highly commended, David Hopkins.
It was a sympathy vote.
So over to you, David.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think I'm going to ruin Martin's plans by actually saying that everything we talk about has been done without the concept or idea of actual CPD. So, show of hands, who has heard of me or knows me in the room? So quite a few people. So you know the kind of things I'm doing, the kind of things I've done through my blog, through Twitter, through kind of the books and research and what I do. And I wanted to take you through a journey through being a learning technologist and also my CMALT. And basically, as I said, it's been done without any forethought, any planning, and certainly no concept of CPD whatsoever. So I'll begin in April 2007 when I first became a learning technologist. Bournemouth University in the business school. There's myself, brand new to learning technology, brand new to higher education after leaving university in '96 with a degree. I had a colleague called Charles who was a demonstrator, so he was an old school IT services guy. He used to go in, get the projector ready, get all the lab works, all the computers ready for the students. There's another guy called Andrew who was a lecturer with special responsibilities to e-learning. And no one in the business school knew what a learning technologist was or should be. So there I was in a job that I didn't know what I was doing and no one could help me. So what I did is I looked around the rest of Bournemouth University and there were other learning technologists. So I went and talked to them. But as it turned out, they were actually demonstrators or lecturers and they had certain responsibilities to e-learning or learning technology. So they didn't know what a learning technologist was either. So I then went off and I looked to the central team of learning technologists, of which there were 4. And I looked at what they did, and they supported Blackboard, they supported Echo 360 and lecture capture, they worked in the library, their IT services. They were looking after the systems, not necessarily the students or the academics. So here I was, about a year into being a learning technologist, still not understanding what I was supposed to be doing. And I was then given 2 other people to mentor in the business school as learning technologists, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I should be doing and what learning technologists did, how it worked, why I did it. So I just started looking elsewhere. And about that time, I started an online course at Oxford Brookes University in how to be an online moderator, because I was working on a fully online degree course. And I got into reflective blogging, and I was introduced to Twitter, of which I didn't do much with for a while, until about a year later, when I started to actually realise that there's a lot of potential to actually going outside of my institution, which of course was frowned upon, and actually start talking to other people, learning technologists. And also I found out what I was supposed to be doing, which basically was whatever I wanted, because there's no rules. And it was quite empowering, because I suddenly thought I can do some things. I had a wonderful opportunity in the business school to work with forward-thinking academics, backward-thinking academics, the professional teams, the administrators, the students. I could go into sessions, and I could look at the technologies that we had, I could look at what we did with them, I could look at what worked and what didn't work, So this is the start of what I now realise this morning was my CPD, but it was all self-led, it was all my own motivation. What it means to be a learning technologist. Martin's already introduced me as I was kind of like a runner-up to Learning Technologist of the Year award. So I'm not going to go into what is a learning technologist, but my slides are online, and if you know my blog, I'll put my blog, there's lots in there. But I thought what I'll do today is just go through a couple of tips about what I think you need for your CPD and what I think you need for CMALT. Now, this is a great big caveat. This is what works for me. I'm not saying it can work for everyone, but take from this what you think might work, try it. If it doesn't work, try something else, modify it, adapt it, blog about it, shout about it, keep yourself, whatever. But I had, at Warwick University at the time, someone who mentored me through CMALT. They didn't realise they were mentoring me through CMALT. I didn't realise they were mentoring me through CMALT, but I was asking the questions that CMALT was asking me. So they helped me just look at the processes, look at what I was doing and why I was doing it. So I totally recommend you find someone, whether they are a learning technologist or an academic or a friend, but someone who can be critical with what you're doing, and you can take that criticism and adapt it and grow with it and work with it. It does help, and it's a really powerful thing to happen. I didn't have study buddy when I was doing this. I was very much sat there trying to work it out there, getting the evidence together, doing reflections, trying to write it. But I do know people who are using a study buddy, and there's a few tweets this morning from James and Sheila about the fact that we haven't done it yet. So there's your study buddy. It's worked out quite nicely for you. Andy Ramsden, who's down in the university campus, Suffolk, I think it is actually putting his whole team through CMALT at the same time, and they have dedicated time set aside when they work on the evidence together, they work on the reflection together, then go off and do that and then come back. And from when I've talked to him about it, he said it's working perfectly. It's really, really good. So if you can do that, and I'm trying to get something implemented at Warwick on this as well, where we can get 3, 4, 10 people through CMALT together, because it's that process of finding the evidence, working out how it can be used, where it can be used, and then actually writing it up and trying to work out how this all fits together. And the biggest thing I'd say is stay put. The worst thing I did was actually change jobs in the middle of writing my CMALT portfolio. I left Bournemouth University, went to work at the University of Leicester. In that month, my notice period when I was working it out, I tried my hardest to get my CMALT portfolio finished, because I knew that as soon as I left, I was going to lose access to all these bits of evidence I'd need, the emails, the websites that behind closed doors, whatever. So once I got to Leicester, I'd settled in, moved house, moved family, what have you, I had to restart my whole CMALT portfolio, because although I'd done a lot of work and I could talk about it, I couldn't evidence it. So when you're looking at your CMALT, it's the fact that you need that evidence. You've got to be able to evidence what you're talking about in order to reflect on it, to say what works, what didn't work, and what didn't work. What has been so paramount to me of importance is that ability to engage through Twitter, through coming to events like this, through conversations, through the comments on blogs, whether someone's commenting on my blog or I'm commenting on someone else's. Because of that engagement with people here that we know, with Martin, with Alt, and the old mailing list as well, it made me understand where I fitted into this world of learning technology. And there are times when I don't think I do fit, and there are times when I think it's good and bad, but it's enabled me to realise where I can go to find a little bit of help or assistance, or I don't understand something. So for instance, I'm really looking forward to Joel talking about Minecraft later, because I don't understand it. I downloaded it £5 for the hour. I spent 5 minutes in it, I dug myself a hole, I built myself a wall and then realised I couldn't get out of it. Great, that was 10 minutes, £5, I didn't know what I was doing, but I know there's so much more to it. And unfortunately, my 5-year-old keeps asking me, what's it about? And I can't tell him. but I know that he's going to be better than me in about 10 minutes' time, but I'd like to understand what it is he wants to do. The reflection on CMALT, on my CPD, is such that I know where I come from and I don't know where I'm going. But I know that what I wanted from CMALT was something to show that I knew what I was talking about. I wanted also to know how I fit into ALT, how I fit into all these other things that are going on. Because I don't know how many people feel this with the institution they're working in. Does anyone have, or does anyone know, if there is a clearly defined progressional role for learning technologists? No. As part of CPD, there should be this, I think. So this is where I came from, because I had nowhere to go. At Hawkins University, I was in the business school, and I had gone as far as I could. There was no senior learning technologist position. There was nowhere else in the university to go. So what was I supposed to do? In the end, I made a decision to actually find another job and move. But that really wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to stay at Hawkins. I wanted to stay working with people I was working with. But for my own development, they didn't know what to do with me. So they didn't understand learning technologies. I'm seeing a lot of nodding faces. Does that sound very familiar? Yeah. It's a shame because the institutions have invested time in us to develop us. We've invested our own time to develop ourselves and develop the people we work with. It would be lovely if we could stay put and actually nurture those relationships and take them further. But if we're going to do what we need to do, which is progress ourselves, for some people, in some instances, we do have to make those moves geographically. Anyone from the old conference, some will remember a pilot plot. But key to CMALT is to have fun, to enjoy the process. I have heard one person say they wrote their portfolio in an hour. I don't believe that's possible. It took me, as I said, about 3 years in total to do it. But that's really because I procrastinated a lot. I wrote a bit, I dropped it, I came back to it months later, I reread it, thought what a load of absolute rubbish that was. But talking with other people about CMALT, about what they're doing, the technologies, the technology, the Oculus Rift, the Minecraft, all these other things that are going on, I decided what I wanted to get engaged in, what I didn't want to get engaged in. I wanted to find out more about something, or I was just quite happy to read what other people are doing. I enjoyed what I did, and I'm still enjoying what I'm doing. And without that enjoyment, possibly the gamification side of it or whatever, it's just about having fun in my job, and I love it. And see, this is, for me, just one step towards, and that's where I come unstuck, because I don't know what I want to do next. I am involved with ALTS, I'm involved with the steering group, and the development group, and the assessors for CMALT, which is kind of the next step for me. I've looked at doing master's courses, but I've got a young family, so I'm not really interested in spending 10 hours a week in the book, where I could be spending 10 hours with my boys. So I don't know where I go next for my own development, but I know that involvement with ALT and my CMALT is one step. I know for a fact that, 6 months ago I joined Warwick Business School, and the fact that I was already CMALT accredited at that time was a big plus for my job application. I'm the only person, certainly in the business school, that's CMALT accredited. I think there's only one other in the whole of the University of Warwick. And that's a big thing. So CMALT itself is very much appreciated and looked at from people who know about learning technologies. So if you are thinking about doing it. And as far as me and where I'm going, I keep thinking, I keep reading, I keep learning, I keep doing all sorts of things because I'm interested in this concept of learning technology. And coming to the conferences, you learn about what other people are doing and how they're doing it. And the next thing for me is I'm looking at my next book. I'm not plugging it, no, I'm not. But Sheila's writing a chapter with David Walker. James, I'm going to say now, is hopefully going to write a chapter for me. We've got lots of other people from HE, FE, workplace learning, and also primary schools to talk about, it's not learning technologists, it's not learning technology, it is how we use technology for learning. It's not education, it's just for learning. So for example, PowerPoint, I meet loads of academics and they want to improve their classroom experience, and actually what they mean is they just want to declutter their PowerPoint slides. So you just sit with them, you work with them on that. It's not rocket science to you or to me, but it's made a huge difference to 15 students. But instead of sitting reading the slides, they can actually pay attention to what the lecturer's saying. That's a very simple learning technology trick. It's not bringing the fanciest, newest kit into the room with Oculus Rift, or everyone's got an iPad that they can put up on the presentation or whatever. But it is about that kind of appropriateness of what do you do, when do you do it, why you do it. So that's kind of where I am, and as I said before, the next step of where I go with my CPD, I don't know. Because unless I go into masters or PhDs, whatever, there isn't really anything out there that can define where I go to show my next CPD, other than taking on more responsibilities, doing more bits of work, doing more research, getting involved with more people. So that's CPD for me. So I completely debunked CPD because it didn't mean anything to me at the time, but through my own motivation, through my own willingness and need to understand where I am and where I want to go, I kind of realised I've actually been doing exactly what the perfect CPD is, which is go out there, find out what you want, find out if you can go to the conference, work out a way to go when no one will pay for you to go, follow online on Twitter, and just generally be active and engaging. It's a short one, I'm afraid, but we've kind of got sessions to do, so thank you.
Thank you. We'll take questions at the end for all our presenters.
Stick around.
Yeah, take a seat. So next we've got Clive Young and Steve Rowett. I actually know Clive quite well because he gave me my first learning technology job.
Yes, I brought him in off the street, so here he is now.
It still costs me quite a bit of money each year to Clive.
Yeah, okay, you're going to get two for the price of one. Myself, I'm going to start off with Steve's going to follow with this presentation, two short presentations. Here at UCL, we take a broad spectrum approach to CPD, and we're going to talk about two ends of that spectrum. Steve's very much on the kind of exciting end, digital literacies, doing exciting things. I'm at the kind of dull end. I'm trying to do deep change within departments, and we're trying to drive e-learning and learning technologies into the mainstream part of UCL. So I'm really kind of warm-up act, if you like, for Steve's presentation is much more interesting. So we've got a few minutes. We're going to talk about why CMALT is important to us. And an alternative title could be is how we fell in love with CMALT. What we're trying to do, this is a kind of a summary of what we talk about. We're into the mainstream at UCL, we're trying to get this kind of deep change in the processes and practices. I'm going to talk about just a little bit of a project we've done. We've done many things. This is one thing that we're particularly proud of, was working with a particular group of staff for learning administrators through a JISC project called Digital Department, in which the CMALT was the kind of, really the kind of main outcome of it, and from that we developed something called the E-Line Champions Initiative. So remember, what we're trying to do is get into this kind of mainstream activity within the UCL. Now this slide is already completely out of date. UCL still has a very strong research focus, and it's still traditionally campus-based, but it's now changed. Today, we merge with the Institute of Education, so UCL now becomes the largest HE institution in London, and we've got 35,000 students from today, from midnight tonight. So it's not kind of big, but in both of those institutions, e-learning is quite strategic, and that's quite important. That's helped us to move along. When we're looking at e-learning, it's now become mainstream. We now regard e-learning as a mainstream activity in our university, and of course one of the implications of that is many more people are now involved in it. And in our JISC project, we're looking at this particular group. These are people who are involved in the delivery and to some extent development of courses, but they're not academics. These are administrators, they're learning managers, administrators. So we've done quite a lot of work over the last 3 or 4 years working with these people to try and raise their digital skills, raise their CPD profile. Through things like online courses and face-to-face courses, but largely through CMALT. The project we had was in collaboration with ourselves, e-learning environments, that's the e-learning central spec, with some of our colleagues out there in the department. And we kind of got into, we didn't originally want to use CMALT, that came later on, we were going to use something else. But it turned out to be very successful for us. So what we've done is we take the CMALT is, we all know and love, it's a sort of this thing, this portfolio, and we kind of dropped it onto the ground, sort of broke, yeah? And then what we did is we put those pieces together in a course. So we turned a portfolio into a course. And that course for us runs from February through to July. And each month we do one part of the portfolio with our colleagues. Okay? We have presentations, as you'd expect. We have lots and lots of discussions. And people have got time in those sessions to start writing up their portfolios. Because every person in this room has a problem with a portfolio, and that's that blank sheet of paper. Is that not true? Is that not true? So what we do is we get people to start writing their portfolios in there, and we've got, working with this kind of group of staff, we've got quite a lot what we've got in participants, we've got 70 odd participants, we're going to run it again this year. We've got plenty of people currently doing it, these are people at various stages, some people have passed it, some people have referred, that means they haven't passed but they're going to resubmit. Lots of people kind of in the process, and not everyone has passed, does that really matter? We've kind of let go of this idea of progression and retention. We just said, look, just being involved in this process, involved in this reflective process when we appear, that's really what's important. So we're getting into the idea of process as important as the product being people pass it. That's important. Group input is very important. Cross-departmental networking, that is the key thing. You want to get everybody speaking to each other. Get away from the departmental silos and get people to share ideas, and that's what we're doing. It makes portfolios not easy, but easier. If you've got people you can chat about and say, well, what am I going to use as a case study? What have I written? Does that make sense to you? That makes things a lot easier. We give them special support reflective writing. Reflective writing is a big problem with portfolios. We help with that. And for us in the centre, it provides a route in to the secrets of the department. You can see what's happening in there. That helps a lot for us. And that's led to something called e-lunch. I'm going to stop in a second. Let's Steve get up. That's led up to our what we call our Champions programme. Many universities have this. They have people in departments who are e-learning specialists or champions who represent the department. We make sure we've got academics and admin support in that. So we have these two people. So we don't have the isolated e-learning champion department. He or she is supported by other people in there, and this whole group is growing quite a lot. And that's really helped a lot because we've got, as an e-learning champions, the yellow water academics and the red water admins, and we're going to recognise now that when we talk about e-learning, all these people are important in the delivery of e-learning, the delivery of that student's experience to our students. We do a lot of work with that kind of group. So, I'm going to stop now in a second. So, the impact, CMALT, why do we fall in love with it? It's helped us to raise the profile of these people as change agents. They become a significant part of our change processes. CMALT has become established in our university as a staff development route. It's allowed us to work with institute education, our new partners, our new staff colleagues. And it allowed us to start work with them earlier through the CMALT to help us to work with. And other institutions in London have been wanting to work with us as well. And one of the things we're going to start in the year, we're going to do a sort of kind of online support for CMALT. We've got this thing called the blended learning open online course, which is developed at the IOE, and we're going to adapt it for both UCL and also back for the IOE people as well. So we're going to do still run CMALT in its traditional way. We love that kind of face-to-face stuff, really important. But because we're really learning people, we have to have an online course to support that, and that's what we're going to do. So that's one end of the spectrum. Steve, you don't need the other end. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Clive. This is the other end of the spectrum. It's something very experimental, something new we wanted to try out, which was a digital festival of UCL, something that was a partnership between staff and students and encourage people to learn in experimental ways, trying things out. And it arose because we were thinking about digital literacy, and a couple of years ago we employed a student over the summer, Hannah Maury, with a video on YouTube of what she found, to talk with staff and students about what we have, what we need. And her conclusion was actually we have everything we've got. This is a coding workshop run by the Tech Society. There's people queuing at the back to get in. So students were motivated and engaged, come and learn new skills, and staff were also present at that event. We've also got a lot of fun things happening at UCL, partly through being in London. So this is the TfL cavalcade of buses that took place this year on Regent Street, and this is an interactive bus stop. So a bus stop you can go and play, you can make music on. A bus stop is a destination rather than just a place to wait out the rain. And this is actually serious research. This is funded by Intel as part of their Sustainable Cities project. We've got a lot of fun things at UCL, but how do we bring them together? We put a call out, partly to the champions, and through the student societies and the students' union, to get a community. And we started planning with that community, staff and students together. Lots of workshops. 139 ideas came out of our first workshop for things we might do as part of our digital festival. And they evolved out. They were presented on a Google group where people could vote on them, talk about them, discuss them. Again, complete partnership between staff and students. We enlisted the help of the Changing the Learning Landscape programme, and ALT and NES gave me some very, very helpful advice and support for our students. I mentioned Hint Hunt earlier on Twitter. We took our 3 students, we employed them over the summer, gave them a good rate of pay, and they went to Hint Hunt. They were obviously the right people for the job because they escaped with 1 minute 20 seconds to spare when myself and my team went for a Christmas retreat. We didn't escape and we were locked in. I highly recommend it, Hint Hunt. I think an example of a good game, probably. We recruited a lot of volunteers. A pool of about 40 in total, and they helped us out on days against staff and students, making lanterns, supporting sessions, streaming, that kind of thing. And we built a schedule of 40 events over the course of the week. Some hosted by students, some hosted by staff. We've got Bitcoin, human genome sequencing, build your own some instruments, laptop orchestra, big data, Google rights to be forgotten, kind of big issues in technology at the moment. We hired a lovely route master bus, which we had parked in our quad. That was one of our venues, and a real centrepiece. And, well, I couldn't resist. Give me a London bus, I'm going to get in the cab. We did find, by the way, that on the final day, the students had come in overnight and pushed the bus over to this side. Just slightly worrying when I turned around the corner and the bus had gone. So we had a lot of sessions. We had a laptop orchestra, people making music. Sounded a bit like Belgian sort of industrial techno. I suppose the best way of describing it. I quite like Belgian industrial techno, it's just handy. The music wasn't for everyone's taste, but good fun. We have this. Can anyone tell me what this is? It's a questionnaire. Again, Intel research. You go through here and you press on buttons and you have sliders and knobs and dials, and then the phone rings and asks you a question. And the motivation for all of this is you get a squishy ball as it drops down through the various stages. So this is interesting research on basically getting people to give feedback and views on things in a novel way. And this was at the Tour de France when it was down in Green Park in London. So good research, and again, bringing some of the research we're doing that's quite fun and engaging, getting our students talking and thinking about it. In fact, one thing we had a student come up who said, I work with elderly people in the church, and it's really hard to get their feedback. Could we borrow the Voxbox and take it to the church? So we've already got a staff student research tie-up. Okay, I knew the Voxbox was going to be a highlight today because we've got lots of photos. It's great fun. We have James Burns, Jane Britton, from our management science group. They did a talk on using lecture tools in a theme of a music festival to tie in what we were doing. And I'll come back to them in a minute, because I think they're going to be really important for the future of DigiFest. We had app developers, user interface developers, graphics specialists, coders around the bus talking about app development, getting students involved in apps. We had film screenings in the bus, where you could go and meet the filmmakers and start doing some digital filmmaking. And we had some evaluation techniques with a little talking Arduino kit here that you write something down, hold it up, and it takes a snapshot and tells you a joke. Impact. Well, this was all 2 weeks ago, so we're still trying to work it out. And I think we have to be realistic. I'd love to say this was a cue for one of both the DigiFest events, but actually it was a cue for the top law firm careers gathering. I think that's still very important about where we as staff and our students are and how we think about our careers. And we also heard this a lot. Wow, this is awesome, but I didn't know about it. And again, how we get the reach into our staff and student communities is still a big challenge for us. And I go back to the Jays. They teach project management and marketing, and they're really interested, if we run DigiFest in a sort of similar format next year, to get their students using it as a live case study for project management things and marketing things. I think that would be really good to get them and our students. But we did get some glimpses of some really nice things happening. Now, I've got a video, but I'll share 3 of them with you now. This student was really keen in talking about the moral questions of data. How we use data, how health companies use data, that kind of thing. And she's now formed a tie-up with the department that's interested in that, and she's going to do some work as a final year project in that area. This guy here is a publisher, he's specialised in science communication, and he wants to do something at DigiFest next year around the way that science is communicated. So a lot of universities are doing this growth of public understanding of science, and he's really involved in getting involved with that. And this student attended a session on the future university, and she says, I was able to sit down and talk with lecturers about how we design courses. I've never been able to do that before. And so she's now plugged into some of the learning champions and some of the events that we normally run for staff, and is going to be a member of our sort of university thinking community in education. So we're seeing some nice glimpses of the kind of tie-up we want to see. It's small scale at the moment, and we want to grow that, but that's the fun we've been having at this time. Thank you.
And finally, we've got James Kieft.
Hello, I'm James Kieft, Learning Technologist at Reading College. I'm going to talk about how we've taken our CPD programme and, as the title of the conference suggests, rebooted it. So initially at the college, it was very proactive, very focused on bringing external people in. We'd have people come in, they'd run a number of sessions through a day, and the CPD team would tick off, yes, we've all achieved our CPD targets. But there wasn't really much impact happening. We weren't getting anywhere with it. We weren't making steps forward. Staff were being strong-armed to attend events, and when they did the standard any questions at the end, everyone sat on their hands, desperate to escape. And we need to do something different. So we thought about it, and we looked at the breadth of skills that we have within the college itself, and thought, well, actually, why are we going outside the college to get these skills, to get people to run sessions? Why don't we ask the staff to run sessions for other staff, to share those skills that we have internally, and this formed what has now become Pass It On. And Pass It On is all about staff running sessions for other staff, sharing good practice, sharing the successes that they are having. I think that's what I've just said, but so that was the drive. It was looking at the skills we had within, looking at how we can use those skills within to really encourage debate, to move us forward in a more meaningful way, where we can buy in, where we can get more buy-in from staff, and we can move things forward. So how do we do it? Well, we got staff to run bite-sized sessions, half-an-hour sessions. These were scheduled at various points throughout the day, so they're scheduled in the morning, sort of breakfast sessions about 8:30, over lunch times, and twilight sessions. And those sessions were on any aspect of teaching and learning. The focus being all aspects of teaching and learning, assessments, whatever it could be, all the different aspects of teaching and learning were topics that they could cover. And these were sessions, they could be technology sessions. Some of the sessions I run focused on using different aspects of technology and how they can be used in the different aspects of teaching and learning. And we use the learning cycle as a way of mapping those aspects. So you've got connect activities, it could be review, recall activities, and those sessions are quite a wide and broad, varied bunch of sessions that we were looking to run. And we thought, well, that's all well and good. We've got a nice collection of sessions that are being run by staff, but how do we capture all of that, and how do we make it available to those staff who potentially aren't in, or don't work 9 to 5? They may be only in to do an evening class, maybe in at the weekends. How do we capture all of that good practice and try and share it and make it available to staff who work outside of those hours? So we looked at developing a platform, a way of capturing all of these sessions that were being done, all of this good practice, and we ended up using Google. As an institution, we've gone Google, all of our students have a Google account, all of our staff have Google accounts. Google Sites, for those of you who are not familiar with it, a very easy way to generate a site. You don't need to be a HTML coder. It's very easy to do. Create a site. When you edit it, it's like using a WYSIWYG. You can just edit it like you would a document. And it meant that we had a platform that the CPD team could take ownership of, but also could allow all of those other people who were delivering to contribute and evolve and develop the sessions as we went forward, and to capture some of what we were doing. So it wasn't just a transient series of workshops that disappeared into the ether. They were able to capture and put forward and contribute to how we progress. So from our initial pass-on sessions, we wanted to one of the key aims, or one of the hopes, was to try and engage all teams and get teams to work together, regardless of which departments they're in. I think we've talked about it already. There's a habit within big organisations that everyone works within silos. And the hope with this was that we could bring down some of those silos. So one of the first things that we did was we introduced Poundland pedagogy. And I'm sure some of you are familiar with that. Basically, it features items from Poundland. Staff are challenged to take an item from the Poundland pedagogy box and make use of it in a lesson, to add to the lesson, to help explain a concept or whatever it may be. And we ran that session. We got a whole college CPD event. They came and collected some Poundland pedagogy items. Some collected paper plates, some collected tablecloths, straws, lollipop sticks, a whole range of different types of things. And their challenge was to go away and think about how they could use those different items within their teaching and learning to get across some concept or something that was being taught in the lesson. They then had to produce a video and share it on YouTube by the end of the day. So we had a competition who could come up with the most creative use of Poundland pedagogy. And that got staff from different departments working together. It got staff thinking about that you don't need to have snazzy iPads, you don't need to have big expensive equipment to engage learners and to get some learning activities happening. So from Poundland pedagogy, that sort of sowed in the seed of staff's minds that actually it was quite fun to work with other staff. It was quite interesting to see what other staff were doing, and whether you're teaching motor vehicle or early years care, there were still elements that you could learn from each other. So we followed that on and thought, well, okay, we've got lots of good practice happening. We want to be able to staff to share that good practice. Now, not all staff are happy to stand up in front of a group of peers and deliver half an hour pass-it-on session. It's quite daunting for some staff to stand up and deliver to a group of their own peers. So how else could they contribute their good practice and share it with colleagues? So we came up with this idea of Pass It On Friday. And for Pass It On Friday, every Friday you share a success and more recently a failure on our Padlet wall. So each Friday there's a fresh Padlet wall. Padlet wall, for those who aren't familiar, just an online space where anyone with a link can edit and add a post. And we've got staff initially to share their successes. It could be just all their students turned up on time. It could be the smallest of success, but any aspect that had gone well, they posted it on the wall. It could have been they tried something with Pound and pedagogy. It could be any aspect that they'd used that had gone successfully. And that got staff into this idea of contributing and sharing good practice. More recently, we've started sharing the big fails. A number of people have talked earlier on today about the fact that if you don't provide that secure environment where people are happy to experiment and give them and allow failure, then we're never going to progress. So by saying actually, it doesn't matter, if you've tried something and it hasn't worked, the fact you've tried it and you've learned something about why it didn't work, which will help improve the next time you do it, is a useful thing. So on Pass It on Fridays, sometimes it's successes of the week, other times it's your big fail, the things that you've tried that haven't worked. And what we found from it is we found that we started getting conversations coming out, we started getting staff from different departments talking, those silos that we initially had started to come down, and we started to see more interdepartmental activities, more working together, more collaborative working. Well, so far all I've done is talk about the academic side, and it's important that not just the academic staff are involved in this process, but also the business support staff. So that they have an opportunity to contribute and also to bring the silos down from you always have the IT silo, the MIS silo. We provide Pass It On 14, similar sort of concept, a Padlet wall to enable business support staff to contribute, and neither are exclusive. If you're a business support member of staff and you want to share on Pass It On, you can do that. And it encouraged business support staff to post about what they were doing, and it helped to bring the college down. So we found Google Sites a really useful way of structuring this content and allowing people to contribute and share good practice. Now, obviously sometimes people aren't available to attend events, so as you can see from the buttons on the site, we had a past event section where there was videos, there were other aspects, examples of past events and what we've done. So new members of staff, people who only work fractionally can see the sorts of events that have taken place and how they're getting on. We're good posting a little small sample on a Padlet wall, but sometimes staff want to reflect more deeply about an activity they've been doing or how they've been working with a group of students. So what we asked is we asked staff to blog, and staff is not a forced thing. Anyone who wants to contribute a post to the Pass It On blog, whether a teacher or a business support staff member, can talk about their practice, what they've done, how they felt it worked. And again, it's all about bringing down those walls and making people aware of what others are doing. So we found that Google Sites has been a really useful platform to allow us to get staff talking about what they're doing, to get those conversations happening, and also about identifying, for other staff, to identify where there are potentially areas for development that they may want to explore further. We wanted to move it on then. We wanted, okay, we started to break down the things. We've got some virtual sharing of our Padlet walls, but we still want good practice to happen. We want those learning conversations to happen. So the next thing to come is open classrooms. And for open classrooms, it's as you'd expect from what the name suggests. We've got some door hangers, green on one side, red on the other, and those staff who were happy for other members of staff, business support or academic staff, to come in and look and watch them teaching, could walk in, watch their teaching, and experience what they were doing, see how other departments were working. And we weren't sure how it was going to go to start with, we weren't sure how many staff would be willing to let other members of staff walk into their classroom and observe them teaching. Thankfully, when we on the first day when we ran the event, when we walked in, there were lots of green door hangers. And once that's enabled, it's enabled the learning conversations to happen, it's enabled people to start to see how other areas work with their students. We got anyone who went to see a class, we asked them to post again on a Padlet wall their reflections about what they'd seen. And we found it's been a really positive experience. It's meant the focus has been very much on teaching and learning. It's been about ideas that they can use within their own teaching and learning. But it's been another thing that's allowed us to bring the walls down and really mean that as a college, we've got a real community of people with a focus on teaching and learning and things that they can do to improve teaching and learning. I've mentioned some of these things already. We wanted those conversations to continue. As I said at the start, we went Google, and one of the big things that we've really embraced with Google is Google Plus communities. For those who aren't familiar with Google Plus communities, they allow a private discussion to happen with specific people. You can share videos, images, just general text about what you're doing. And those communities have allowed the staff to continue those discussions outside of what's happening on a Friday, rather than pass it on wall. And it's meant that as a college, we all feel much more connected. So I can log onto my iPad and I can see what events are happening there today. I can see what the different departments are doing. And for my role as a learning technologist, I can see how the different departments are using learning technology. We mentioned Padlet already. GMAG is another one we've used. So every term we put together a co-authored online magazine that features all aspects to do with teaching and learning. This may be technology, it could be to do with assessment. There are different themes for each month, and all staff are invited to contribute articles to that. And I suppose the reason I think it's been a success is we've had management buy-in. We've had from the top down, managers bought into this process, they supported this process, and technology has been an integral part of that whole process. So when the managers send out a briefing, a termly briefing, they do it on an online small. All of Pass It On has been used to showcase and highlight opportunities for use of technology. So it's really worked as a way of, highlighting to staff lots of technology platforms that they can use and make most of in their teaching, but it's allowed us to bring the college closer together. And then the final thing is there's such a raft of technologies available, and by giving staff the confidence to experiment and to try out different things, it allows it's just allowed us to move at a much faster rate. And it's meant that certain departments who haven't historically engaged with technology now have a raft of different technologies that they can make use of and use within their teaching and learning. So I suppose the final thing is, if you want to have a look at what we're doing, there's an external Pass It On site that showcases some of what we're about. I suppose the big thing for us, the impact has been, we've broken down those silos. We've got staff talking about whether they're business support or academic staff talking about teaching and learning, which is, of course, our primary business. So there we are. Thank you very much.
I hope you've enjoyed that download of different ideas that have come out from some very different individuals and institutions. We've got a couple of minutes for questions, so if there are any questions for any of our presenters, and I wonder if our presenters would just like to come up to the front for a second. Is there any, from that download, is there anything that, in particular, that you'd like to unpack? Or all you just smelling lunch? So, yes.
I've tweeted this as well when Clive was talking, but is there some kind of accreditation, some kind of process for teams like ours to become accredited to deliver or facilitate CMALT kind of programs in our institutions? Are you an assessor or a mentor under the CMALT banner?
We've tried to build as a community, actually. I mean, there's nothing really, I think, from all. I don't think that's in planning, but what we try to do is encourage people who've been through it then to become mentors for the next group. So I went through it, and then I became a mentor, and then and really the most kind of rewarding thing is where some of our teaching administrators, who are not really learning people as a main part of the job, get the confidence to become mentors for their colleagues. And we really like that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's quite nice to see people feel they've got the confidence to go through. And I think as somebody was mentioning earlier on, it's about having confidence in what you're doing is very important. You have a lot of skills, but be able to recognise yourself that you have some, that's recognised by yourself in the community. It's very important.
Yeah, one thing I didn't say earlier is that in some respects I found it really helpful and really hurtful actually reading other people's portfolios, because I started reading other people's portfolios and I got really dejected thinking, oh wow, they've been involved in 15 GIST projects, I've only read 3. Look at what other people have done, it's like, oh, you've done a lot, and then look at what you've done, think, there's nothing. But then actually then seeing past that and thinking, right, don't look at what they've done, look at how they've done the portfolio. And that's where the key is, because each person here who's done it will be doing completely different types of work in completely different areas. So don't get despondent and dejected by looking at what they've done, because you need to look at what you've done and how you fit yourself into CMALT. And getting the mentors, I mean, I'm happy to mentor anyone you want, and I'm beginning the CMALT assessors process as well. So for me, it's going to carry on that scale of things, but maybe it is something we worth look at in old, and whether there is something in that team dynamic.
Also to say that there are discounts if groups of you from your institution go through CMALT, so there are other benefits for doing it.
I mean, can you say, anyway, whether they do it our way or any other way, try and do it in a group, because there's a lot of coaching and self-support to be done, and I think a lot of it's for people just to recognise what they're doing. Exactly, you see, you don't have to do big GIST projects, just the day-to-day stuff. If you're recognising and approaching the right kind of way, you can write your CMALT, and I think that's a big lesson for us.
Also, if you keep looking back at the guidelines on old about the portfolio, every time I reread it, I found something new in there. So, for example, part of evidence can just be an email from your manager outlining or whatever. So there's lots of different types of evidence. It doesn't have to be this website that just posts or whatever. It can just be a poster or a screenshot or a reply from someone in an email. So you've all got something out there you can put in the portfolio.
I think, was there a question just behind Sheila? Sheila next. You first, sorry.
I was going to ask Clive and Steve what the lead-in time for that digital text was. How many months in advance to find that?
We started planning in about April, and then had 3 students working over the summer. One of the things we noticed was how very sensitive it was to the time of the year. Because obviously students are very busy in April, May with exams. Then they're around over the summer if you can get them, and they disappeared in September. So we kind of kept balancing the sort of rate. We also had 2 full-time members of staff on it, the kind of roles of staff and student responsibilities during that time. One thing that was quite interesting is how we found people drifted in and out as well. So they came in, were involved in organising something, but then they would disappear for a month and you didn't see them again. Which I guess is a very different type of engagement than something like CMALT. But it's often the way that universities work is that it's very seasonal and sort of very transitional.
And Sheila?
A question for James. I thought that was really fantastic, the range of resources that you've got and that staff are leading this. Does staff get any formal recognition of involvement in any of these activities?
Yes, so what we've moved on, and the programme has grown sort of exponentially. So now we've moved to the point where we have each member of staff has a Google site that's their CPD record. And they're asked to reflect on sessions that they've attended. And we've now introduced only local badges, but badges for contributions to pass it on, or badges for contributing to running pass it on sessions. So there's a recognition for their contribution to pass it on.
Okay, well, last question from Paul.
Yeah, it's just a question, quite interested in what you said, an alternative beyond CMALT. And I'm sure that many, many people in this room, where do you go, what do you do when you become a learning technologist? What do we need to do to support that next career move or to develop yourself internally if you want to be a learning technologist in that particular fashion for the rest of it? Where do you go, what do we do, what can we do as a group to, I hate the term, but call ourselves a professionalise, get a career, or should we just, we know what we want, well, we don't know what we want, but we know how to get it kind of attitude.
Great question. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows at the moment. Obviously, working in HE, the natural progression for me would be to do masters or something beyond that. But as I said, I was interested in it a couple of years ago. I'm not at the moment. I don't want to spend that time sat with my head in books or computers.
So would you want to affect change with your skills?
Yeah.
How?
There is that professional element of it, and as more people have CMALT, the CMALT itself is considered more highly, and I think certainly at Warwick it is. There's a lot of people that just seems to tweet with people there saying they've done it and they're doing it, so I know it's there. And as I said, when I went for the job interview at Warwick at the business school, that was quite key. They were impressed that I had that, so they knew about it. So as more people outside of the realm of ALT get to hear of CMALT and what it is, then the importance for us to have it, then the recognition that CMALT will give, because it is peer reviewed, and perhaps we do need something that's CMALT plus, another stage which we haven't got yet. Don't know what that will be or how what kind of form it will take, but
I think colleges, particularly, and to some extent universities, are really struggling with the strategic challenge of technology. Really struggling. General statement?
Just a quick one back with that thing. Do you have a teaching role at your university?
No.
No, because that's one thing we're pushing for at Hull, and we're actually contemplating moving our me and Patrick to the technology and arts learning advisors, because we think about the technologies in the sense we work strategically more on policy. We're actually going to be possibly push on academic contracts. So that's a real...
Not 0 hours.
No. So that's actually a real recognition for the university of the value of technology and arts learning. We're actually going to be teaching on certain modules and modular ownership, particularly on our BDC programs or our ECAP programs. So maybe there's a route there for the technologists to move across from being business service to academic. If they've got a well-received academic background, and maybe that's where some of those technologists are lacking, maybe then there's a growth there for CPD people. But if they can get that, I would recommend anyone get the teaching qualifications to back up what you do, and then you become more of an asset for the university.
Well, conscious that lunch is out ready to go, so if we could just thank all our speakers one more time. There'll be an opportunity at the end of today in the plenary to continue some of these discussions on here, but obviously I think all our presenters are hanging on for lunch as well, so you can nab them for a couple of quick questions. And we'll see you back here at 1:30. Thank you.